Hey, listen, bro. Listen, bro.
Niggas ain't saying, man, that nigga there, woo, woo, woo. And his brother go shoot at us. That nigga brother pull a gun out on Big U, nigga.
What if a single piece of grainy footage could ignite a fire that's been smoldering for years? Yesterday, that fire exploded across Los Angeles when Blacc Sam was arrested for the brutal murder of Big U's son, Jabari Henley, an act that shattered the hood and set off a storm of retaliation. In this video, we'll break down the shocking footage that sparked the violence, the chain of events that led to Sam's arrest, and what this means for the future of street politics in LA. Stay tuned for the full story, because the truth is more explosive than you can imagine. Y'all want to sign too, grimy? Look at these two dudes, Huey and Nipsey Hussle on the block. And now, a fresh wave of headlines is crashing down over South Los Angeles, a city still rattled by the tragedy that unfolded last Halloween night. Big U's son, Jabari Henley, was taken out, and the ripple effect feels like an unending storm. Since the brutal murder of Nipsey Hussle, or Ernest Joseph Asgodam, on Halloween, the streets have been in turmoil. The pain has never faded, but something new has sparked. Nippy's death was a single, shocking event that seemed to sever any hope for a peaceful future. Now, a new violent moment has been added to the list of young black men who have been cut down before they could grow. And this time, the target was not a rival or a snitch. It was the son of a man who has long been at the center of conspiracy theories that refuse to die. The theory that Big U betrayed Nippy, that he was behind the hit, has been simmering in corners of the hood and social media for years. Eric Holder Jr. was convicted in 2022, but the court record made it clear that it was a personal beef, a matter of snitch accusations, not a hit orchestrated from the shadows. Yet the narrative stuck. Loose Cannon, a fellow Rollins 60s affiliate, kept whispering that Big U was the one who set up the murder. And every time people heard the name Nippy, they saw a betrayal. A laugh that might have been nervous, that could have been a joke in context, was turned into evidence. The fact is that the narrative about Big U as a betrayer has deep roots in the community, where people are searching for someone to blame. In a city where bloodlines can be death sentences, it does not matter whether a record is real or a rumor. It is enough for a narrative to take hold. The streets have always been full of stories that seem larger than life, and the streets have always been a place where stories can become gospel. Big U's reaction in an Instagram live session when someone mentioned Nippy was weaponized against him for years, and the laugh that he made became proof that he had something to do with Nippy's death. The more Big U denied it, the more suspicious he looked to those who were already convinced of his guilt in the streets. So, when that old Instagram live footage of Big U, Nippy, and Jabari together resurfaced in late October 2025, it hit multiple raw nerves simultaneously throughout the hood. The video was simple: 3 men together in a casual setting, laughing and talking about how life in the hood is tough. But the footage hit multiple raw nerves in the community. And soon after, the internet erupted with celebrations disguised as street justice finally being served. In just a matter of hours, one of the 3 men in that video would be laid out in the morgue, and the internet would erupt with celebrations disguised as street justice finally being served. The hit that took Jabari's life occurred on Halloween night at approximately 11:11 p.m. on October 31st, 2025. The intersection of South Figueroa Street and West 69th Street is located in the heart of South Los Angeles, Vermont's Slauson neighborhood, where the streets never sleep. A small, independently owned smoke shop called Fig and 69 Smoke Spot was the location where Jabari had pulled up. That corner store sold Swisser Sweets, energy drinks, and lottery tickets. The area sits in historically Rollin 60s neighborhood Crips territory, but the shop itself had no documented gang affiliations. That corner was, however, a business trying to survive in a neighborhood where survival itself is a daily negotiation with death. Jabari pulled up to the shop, and for about 10 to 15 seconds, he appeared to be talking to whoever was inside through the passenger side window, just like the casual exchange that happens 1,000 times a day on Los Angeles streets. Then, everything exploded into straight violence. A black sedan, maybe a late-model Toyota Camry or Honda Accord, pulled up to the curb and the driver emerged. Jabari got inside the passenger side window and a brief exchange seemed to happen. The gunfire then started, echoing off buildings and shattering the Halloween night air. 7 rounds came out of the semi-automatic 9mm or .40 caliber gun, hitting Jabari 4 times with devastating precision.
He wanted to leave a bad deal that he'd got into with Big U's unique label.
So I signed into it. It was signed to a 10-year production contract, which started in.
The final gasping attempts the body made, the body gasping for survival against catastrophic trauma, could not overcome the damage. He collapsed near the shop's entrance, clutching his side, blood soaking into the pavement while the sedan bent the corner northbound on Figueroa, heading towards 68th Street and disappearing into the maze of South LA streets. First responders pulled up at 11:14 p.m., finding him unresponsive. They began CPR, administered epinephrine, but the damage was too catastrophic, the blood loss too severe. At 11:28 p.m., he was pronounced dead. His body was left for LAPD homicide detectives and the coroner, and his spirit joined the long list of young black men whose lives were cut short on these streets. The Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner coroner would later conduct an autopsy, confirming the circumstances. Death by multiple gunshot wounds, hemorrhagic shock, laceration of the left pulmonary artery, no alcohol or controlled substances in his system. This was not about being high or being caught. It was about being born with a last name that made him a target in a city where bloodlines can be death sentences. The manner of death was officially classified as homicide. The perpetrators remained at large, locked behind the walls of the Metropolitan Detention Center, where Big U was fighting federal RICO charges that could put him away forever. Big U was sleeping when his world shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The news reached him around 11:20 p.m. The phone vibrated on the nightstand, and the call came in the middle of a dreamless night. He was at home, watching television and scrolling through his feeds, unaware of the violent storm that was brewing on the streets of South Los Angeles. He didn't know that his son would become the next victim in a city that had already lost so much, including Nipsey Hussle in 2019, Eric Holder Jr. in 2022, and now Jabari. The streets were no longer the safe haven that some people claimed it had been. Jabari was the younger brother of Big U's son, a son with a name that carried a weight. He had a young daughter, a brother, and a father who had been a controversial figure for years. The streets of South Los Angeles had long been a place where people would die for no reason at all. And now, with the news that Jabari had been murdered, the tension that has been building since the death of Nippy had exploded into a full-blown crisis. We all know that Big U has a history. He was a big name in the music industry. He had his own record label, Rollins 60s, and he had a son who was a big name in the music industry. But it doesn't matter what his history is. The fact remains that he was the one who had the name that caused him to become a target in a city where bloodlines can be death sentences. He was at the center of conspiracy theories that never faded away. Eric Holder Jr. was convicted in February 2022 and sentenced to 60 years to life for Nippy's murder. The trial was about personal beef and snitching accusations. Eric Holder Jr. was not a lone actor, but the court case made it clear that the murder was about personal beef and snitching. Yet, the theories never died. They were rooted in certain corners of social media and the streets where people were looking for someone to blame. The footage that surfaced showing Big U's reaction when someone mentioned Nippy during an Instagram live session was weaponized against him for years to come. The clip was the perfect example of how a laugh can become proof to his ops and detractors that Big U had something to do with Nippy's death. The more Big U denied involvement, the more suspicious he looked to those convinced of his guilt. Wack 100, Nippy's former manager, became one of Big U's most vocal critics and loudest ops, alleging that Big U had provided information to federal investigators during a 2018 RICO probe that indirectly led to Nippy being targeted as a snitch. The court did not find evidence that Big U was involved in the murder, but people in the hood still saw the name. Charleston White added more explosive claims to the conspiracy mill, alleging physical altercations between Big U and Nippy's family over money and control. The claim that Nippy was a hit was about power and extortion rather than the snitching narrative. The hit went down at 11:11 p.m. on October 31st, 2025, at the intersection of South Figueroa Street and West 69th Street. Jabari had pulled up to a small independently owned smoke shop called Fig and 69 Smoke Spot that sells Swisher sweets, energy drinks, and lottery tickets. The area sits in what has historically been Rollin 60s neighborhood Crips territory, but the shop itself had no documented gang affiliations. The area sits in what has historically been Rollin 60s neighborhood Crips territory. The shop had no documented gang affiliations. At 11:14 p.m., paramedics were on the scene, finding Jabari unresponsive.
By bringing DJ Khaled to the 60s hood and not asking permission. They were there to shoot a music video for Khaled's song Higher that featured Nipsey and John Legend. Allegedly, Big U sent Rollin 60s members to the shoot to cause trouble, causing Nipsey and Khaled to have to...
They did everything they could, CPR, epinephrine, but the damage was too catastrophic, the blood loss too severe. He was pronounced dead. The Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner coroner conducted the autopsy, confirming death by multiple gunshot wounds, hemorrhagic shock, and laceration of the left pulmonary artery. No alcohol or controlled substances were found in his system. The manner of death was homicide. The perpetrators remain at large, locked behind the walls of the Metropolitan Detention Center, where he was fighting federal RICO charges that could put him away forever. Big U, who had been in self-representation against the full weight of the federal government, was still sleeping, unaware that his son had become the latest victim in the hood. The tension that had been building since the death of Nippy had exploded into a crisis, and it was about the hood's story. Now the conversation around Big U continues. He has always had a big name. He has a name that has carried weight in the music industry. He has a son, and a son that is a big name in the music industry. But it doesn't matter. The facts are simple. People in the hood see a story about betrayal, a story about power, a story about snitches, and a story about the name that caused them to become a target. We all know that Big U had the name that caused him to become a target in the hood. We also know that the story has always been about the name. The hood is full of stories about betrayal, power, and control. It remains to be seen if Big U will ever be able to put his son's life into a story about the name. But the story remains. We are living in a world where a name can become a weight in a city that has a high number of murders. The streets of South Los Angeles had long been a place where people would die for no reason. The story is about the name that causes people to be a target. And that is how the new violent event with Jabari, the son of Big U, became a new headline for the South Los Angeles community. It reminded us that stories can be taken out of context and become evidence, that a laugh can become proof, and that a conspiracy theory can become a gospel. The new event was about the name that was the cause of the name that would be a target in a city where bloodlines can be death sentences. The night of that call cracked open the dark walls of the MCI cell and rang through Big U's mind like a cruel reminder that nothing could silence the blood that flowed through his veins. In that tiny concrete room, with the hum of the ventilation system as his only companion, he felt the weight of two separate battles collide: his own legal stranglehold and the savage collective grief that erupted online. The words of his cellmate, a voice that sounded almost compassionate in the bleakness, carried the rawness of the moment. We're trying to pull through the different leads, but the internet has turned into a maze. That simple statement underscored the chaos that had erupted. Every message, every tweet, every meme, every pixel was a thread tugging at the fabric of a case that was still untangled. When the call came at 3 a.m. in the corner of the MCI, a whispering of names and accusations slid across his mind. He could see the words Big U flashing, the echo of a name that had long been associated with violence. He saw the words Nippy, the name of a figure who had sought to bring peace. He could almost taste the bitter aftertaste of online mobs celebrating a death as though it were a cosmic balance, as though justice had finally been served. He didn't get to ask his son whether he was truly a target of a long-held beef, or if his name alone made him a target regardless of his own choices. He saw in a series of screenshots the comments, "This is up, you know what I mean? It's because you're born into it." The words were crude, but they carried a certain cold logic. It was an easy line. If your father was involved in a beef, then your bloodline made you a target. That line is dangerous because it turns families into collateral damage. The weight of the name Big U had become a death sentence for the younger generation, regardless of their personal actions. The story continued to unfold. While the internet turned into a chaotic mix of condemnation and celebration, the police were stuck in a nightmare of sorting through misinformation. Between November 1st and 2nd, over 150 anonymous tips arrived at Crime Stoppers, most of them referencing old beefs and revenge theories. A detective's day became a balancing act. Filter the noise, find the truth, and keep the community from spiraling into further violence. Meanwhile, the internet continued to spread. The algorithm of platforms seemed to be designed for sensational content. Graphic videos remained visible even after being demonetized. Doctored addresses and workplace details were posted, doxing a family that had already lost a son. This kind of harassment did not just cross a boundary, it crossed a moral line. The removal of a few accounts or the imposition of warning labels was insufficient to stop the flood.
One of the co-defendants in the upcoming case actually revealed on No Jumper that Big U had told him Nipsey was dead before it even happened, with Loose Cannon saying that Big U had prior knowledge of Nipsey's death before it all went down, mentioning on the phone to him, which led.
The digital echo chamber amplified anger more than compassion. The fact that 62% of analyzed posts invoked the name of Nip, a figure who had died years earlier, further twisted the narrative. The conversation had become a twisted dance, celebrating a death while ignoring the life that was lost. But there were also voices, small yet poignant, that attempted to break the cycle. Blacc Sam, Nip's brother, took to Mara Records' Instagram to post a stark reminder. Pain multiplies pain. Honor Nip with peace, not this. That message, simple but powerful, struck a chord with those who understood the legacy of Nip's attempts to break the cycle of violence. It was a call for humanity in a moment where anger and vengeance had taken the center stage. It is essential to realize how the internet can become a double-edged sword. On one side, a video of a man dying on the pavement can attract the attention of a potential witness, a person who saw a suspect or heard a detail that could lead to an arrest. On the other side, that same video can become a meme, a source of hate, a symbol of an online community's disdain. In the case of Jabari's murder, the digital trail led to a sea of unverified rumors, each a potential lead that could derail the investigation or, worse, lead to an innocent person being targeted. The social media reaction was not just a matter of platform policy. The removal of content was delayed, often after a significant number of viewers had already seen the graphic footage. The suspension of accounts was reactive. When Twitter X suspended 15 accounts, it was after they had posted the address and details that would have made a family a target for doxing. By that point, the damage was done. A small, effective action could have been a bigger preventative measure, but the platforms were playing catch-up. At the same time, the broader context of Los Angeles was a powder keg. The city was already seeing a surge in shootings. The summer of 2025 had brought new tensions as different gangs clashed. The streets were hot and the community was exhausted. A single incident could trigger a ripple effect, a retaliation cycle that could bring even more violence to the neighborhood. In that environment, a name like Big U became a badge that could trigger an automatic attack. The name was a death sentence that anyone with that surname might carry into a new day, regardless of whether they had been involved in any conflict. The investigation itself was a slow, meticulous process. LAPD detectives were working through hours of surveillance footage, cross-checking each frame to find the suspect's face or the vehicle involved. Ballistics analysis had not yet yielded any leads. The process was slow because each new piece of evidence had to be authenticated. In a world where rumors spread like wildfire, the detectives had to be careful not to let a piece of misinformation cloud their judgment. In the meantime, the street remained volatile. The fear of being targeted lingered. The community's sense of safety evaporated, making them less willing to speak out. This created a vicious circle. The more rumors they heard, the less likely they were to come forward. The emotional toll on Big U, who had already lost a son, was immense. The call at 3 a.m. from his cellmate was a reminder that he was not alone. In the world of the MCI, a single conversation can feel like a lifeline. The words, "We're pulling through the different leads," were a testament to the camaraderie that could arise in an otherwise hostile environment. He could find solace in the fact that even in a prison cell, there were people who were fighting the same war. It is important to understand that he was dealing with a double burden: the legal pressure of his own case and the weight of his son's death. He could not see a path forward until justice was served for both. The story was not just about the immediate reaction, it was also about the long-term implications. The internet's mob justice, the celebration of a death as a form of retribution, the sense that families were guilty by association, these were all aspects that would shape the future of the community. People who had once sought to honor Nip's memory now seemed to have lost their sense of compassion. The question that remained was how the city could heal. The police had to sift through the noise, but the fact remained that the murder remained unsolved. By November 6th, no arrests had been made. The investigators were still waiting for ballistics results, still interviewing witnesses, still piecing together a puzzle that had been clouded by misinformation. The lack of resolution only fueled more speculation. The internet, once a tool, had become a challenge. People looked for answers, but they were confronted with an endless list of theories that had no evidence behind them.